Hey everyone, it's fantastic to see all of you and to see all of you chatting. We are so excited that you are joining an awkward name for a team that does, I think, amazing things. So our mission here at the school is to build educational experiences for journalists in the middle of their career, for media entrepreneurs, for media professionals, for media executives. So pretty much following our mission to train journalism professionals at all levels of their career and help them become more effective in dealing with innovation and transformation and driving their organizations forward. So that's what we are doing here, and you're going to meet quite a few of our team today in this conference, and hopefully we all get time to connect. We also will share a little kind of connection sheet a little bit later, where you can, if you want, enter your email addresses and contact details if you want to chat with others about media innovation and entrepreneurship. And we'll also, aside from panels, have a happy hour at the end of this day today, where we hope that we see some of you and get to meet some new people. So let's hope that it's going to be an exciting day for all of us. Some of you might not be familiar with the Run the World platform. It's pretty intuitive. You see your speakers here, so that's us. That's already the first panel that we're going to introduce in a bit. Hey, everyone. And then you see a chat function, so you can, chat with people directly. You can post your comments and questions in the chat, and throughout the whole day, we're going to have members of our team are going to kind of explain how to use that platform and, going to share links to interesting programs or articles or documents throughout the whole day, so that you stay connected and informed. We have a hashtag for that event that I think my colleague already posted in the chat, or will be posting in the chat as well. It's hashtag Redefining EJ, so entrepreneurial journalism, and we'd love for you all to share if you hear something today that you think is exciting. And one thing that I want to say before I pass it on to Jeremy to talk a bit about the entrepreneurial programs that we run here at the school is I want to thank the Facebook Journalism Project that is supporting our entrepreneurial programs as well as this event. And, it makes it possible with money for scholarships that we can give spots in our programs to people who otherwise couldn't afford that, which makes it way easier for people from, especially also other parts of the world, to join in our online programs and take part in them. So we're grateful for that. And yeah, without further ado, I'd love to hand it over to Jeremy Kaplan, who is our Director of Teaching and Learning here at Newmark J School, but he's also the mastermind behind the entrepreneurial programs that we are running here at the school. And for those of you who maybe don't know Newmark J School that well, it's a pretty young journalism school based in New York City. And our core focus is really on innovation in the industry. And I think we were the first J School, but Jeremy can probably give more insight into that. We were the very first J School that had an entrepreneurial journalism program 10 years ago, which was, before the whole wave of creators and media entrepreneurs, before everyone started to talk about that. And he's going to tell you a little bit about how we kind of revamped that program in the past month. So, Jeremy, over to you.
Thanks, Anita. So I'm not going to talk too much because I want to get to our primary panelists who you're here to see. But I'll just tell you that we started this program, a new program for journalism creators, about a year ago. Actually, we envisioned this before the pandemic, and then suddenly the world made it more and more relevant. And our focus is really helping journalists become independent and succeed as independent journalists and create new ventures, which might be newsletters, podcasts, apps, websites, pretty much anything that will allow them to do the work that they do effectively and sustainably. And we actually had an entrepreneurial program back in 2010, but it was in person. And people would travel from across the world to spend 4 months in New York, which is great for some people, but very difficult for others. So I'm excited that now we're able to welcome people from all over the world who come and spend time with us virtually. And it's a mixed kind of hybrid program with live sessions and asynchronous sessions. And but what we're really here to do today is to kind of learn from some of the folks who are doing this so creatively right now. And we have 4 of them assembled in this first panel, and you'll hear from, as the day progresses, others who are doing really interesting and innovative things independently, which is different from a lot of what we hear about in the media ecosystem. We hear about big companies, we hear about the New York Times, all of which is exciting and interesting, but this is a very different conversation. This is about independents who are doing things nimbly. They're armies of one. They're trying to figure things out. They don't necessarily have all the answers yet, but the people we've assembled today, in my view at least, have figured some things out and are really full of some interesting ideas and experiments. A lot of what they're doing, I think, is experimenting, trying stuff out, and some of it's really great. And so we'll hear from them about that. I want to encourage people to put their comments or questions in the chat. We'll try to get some of those comments and questions surfaced as we go along if we can. And I also want to give you a chance to engage through a couple polls now and then. The first question is a really simple one. Are you in the U.S.? The U.S. has some strange weather going on in different places. And you'll see the poll right in front of you. So we can get a sense of who's here from inside the U.S., who's here from outside the U.S. Looks like we've got about 3/4 so far are in the U.S. Now it's shifting downwards. So we've got now about 30% of people are outside the U.S. somewhere. So you can share in the chat if you'd like, wherever you are actually from, if you'd like. That's always interesting, I think, for people to see where people are coming around here from. And if you're interested, I'm also putting in the chat a link to a little Airtable about our first 20 journalism creators. So they're all working on their new ventures, and you can see a little bit of what they've been working on with that. So now the poll is about concluded, and I see that it looks like about 1/3 are from outside the U.S., which is exciting. So welcome to everyone from wherever you are. And I am now going to kind of open it up to our first 4 panelists to introduce themselves. We're going to do kind of really pretty quick intros. We're going to try to keep this concise, but they're all doing such amazing, interesting things in different spheres. So we're going to give them a chance to just give you a quick summary of what they actually do, and then we'll move on from there. So Brian, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I'm Brian Morrissey. Until last October, I spent the previous decade as the president and editor-in-chief of Digiday Media. And Digiday Media was Digiday, which was focused on the media and marketing industry, and also Glossy, which is fashion and beauty, and Modern Retail, which is, well, retail. I've been covering this industry for 20 years, I guess. I think it's great that Newmark is having something on entrepreneurial journalism, because I went to Columbia and there was never any talk of that. It was like, you're either they were still training everyone to go and work for like the Orlando Sentinel and then work their way up, and maybe you get a shot at the New York Daily News. And I think obviously this industry has changed quite a bit. And I think in many ways it's failed the journalists. And I think it's great that journalists are going out on their own and creating the value and livelihoods for themselves. So very excited for this panel.
Thanks, Brian. And later on, I want to ask you about your first sponsor and your newsletter this week.
I didn't even promote my newsletter. See, this is all new.
Yeah, just give us that name of it. And then
we'll rule one of having a newsletter is always promote your newsletter.
Yeah.
I left in October, so I'm like sort of figuring out what's next, but I started a newsletter because I think that's like required these days. And so I have one on Substack. It's called The Rebooting. And it's a little bit meta because it's about building sustainable media businesses of all sizes, but I'm kind of more into niche media than general interest mass media.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Sherry?
Yes, thank you so much, Jeremy. Thanks so much to everyone for being here. I'm just looking in the chat, and yeah, it's like super international of a group that I'm really excited about. I guess briefly, so I currently run my own, I would call it like a niche media business. It's a newsletter and membership community called Water and Music that focuses on kind of in-depth analysis of trends in the music business. And usually there's a very strong tech focus, and music and tech has been my beat as a freelance writer for the last 5 to 6 years. So I've kind of gone through that process of freelance writing, working in, you could say like the traditional media industry. And then in 2019, I decided to launch my own newsletter, and now I basically run that full time.
Thanks. And I just posted the link to your awesome LinkedIn post, Sherry, which was like a huge viral thing because you were so candid about, how it actually worked, and you put some specific numbers in there, which is always really appreciated by people who are trying to figure this out. And you shared, the challenges as well as what was working. So that was really, really cool. A lot of good insight about Patreon specifically too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Darian.
Hello. Hi. I am Darian. I am a beauty reporter. My personal publication, which I have on Substack, is Beauty IRL. I focus on beauty at the intersection of politics and pop culture. My background was actually working in newsrooms as a social media editor, a news curation editor. So just thinking a lot about how news and information is presented natively on social platforms, from social to sending push alerts to changing home pages, all of that. Had always really been into beauty. I had realized that it was, a multi-billion-dollar industry that isn't reported on the same way that tech or politics or even sports is. And so I kind of set out to figure out how I could transfer some of my skills from the newsroom into doing more of that work that I became really passionate about. And so my main kind of thing that I focus on is my newsletter, but I feel like there are also a variety of different things that kind of come with being in this space that I also do a lot of things around creating videos that are maybe more of a translation of some of the things I write, or I'm just thinking also about how I can curate beauty news itself, even as a reporter. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think those are the main things. I write for the New York Times, Teen Vogue, Refinery 29, and Allure.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, and you've had a lot of experience at various places of all kinds, small and large, right? BuzzFeed, NBC, Yahoo, et cetera. So maybe we can come back later to some of the things you're able to apply from having been at those kinds of outlets. Thank you. Yeah, Erin.
Hi. Yeah. First off, thanks for having me. It's always fun to do these things. I'm Erin. I stumbled into this totally. It was one of those, a lot of things weren't fitting in my career. So I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do my own thing. That was the first pivot. So I just graduated from NYU Studio 20 program and did a full master's thesis project on all of this, which is now turned into a newsletter and a full side project. Darian was actually someone I talked to throughout that process. But I kind of came through my career through the intersection of tech and media and being frustrated at both worlds. So I was like, let me just start writing about it and consulting on it. Launched the newsletter, then false launched the newsletter and was like, just kidding, let's slow down and actually think what I want this to be, and kind of figuring out the balance between consulting with like independent brands, really wanting to figure out, we've got a bunch of people doing this trend, what works, but also working with independent creators as well. So right down the middle.
Great. Thanks, Erin. Yeah, this is an amazing group. I just think each of you are doing such interesting and very different things. There are several core things, I think, at the center of being an independent. One is, creating a great product. Another is building a community around that and engaging with the community. And the third is making your work sustainable, right? Generating revenue and figuring out how to think about the money side. And I think we're all really excited about the products and the cool newsletters you all have and the cool kind of journalistic ideas and work that you do. But we talk a lot about that, and everyone hears a lot about it and reads a lot about that. So I want to start with the other end of it, which is the business side, the money. Because I think people are really often nervous about that. That's often the most challenging part for people who have a journalistic background. So I want to kick it back to Brian. I mentioned your sponsorship this week. That was a first you mentioned in your newsletter. Yeah. And I wonder if you can just say a few words about how that came about, what you're learning from that, what you're trying to figure out about that, how you're thinking about new models. You had a salary before. Now you have your independent approach. Just say a few words about how you're thinking about that, how it's going so far, where you're headed with that, and then maybe the others can chime in on how you're thinking about revenue as well.
Yeah, I would say first, I'm mostly thinking about what I'm doing with the newsletter, from more of like a personal project, but this was like serendipitous in that, I've known the CMO, Aaron Goldman at MediaOcean, which is like a publisher technology company. They provide a lot of, not publisher, actually advertising. They provide a lot of the tools that allow for like billing and reconciliation and stuff for ad campaigns. And one of the great tricks, if you are going to take sponsorship money, which why not, is use it or lose it budgets. These are a miraculous thing. At the end of the year, marketing is so screwed up. It's almost as screwed up as publishing. That's why these things are joined at the hip. Marketers have like budgets that go away. They get less budget for the next year if they don't spend the money. So like I was able to sort of skate in. I hope Aaron doesn't mind me saying this, on like a use it or lose it budget at the end of the year. And we were like,
no, I'm like, let's use the system. Like we acknowledge the system, use the system.
Yeah. So like that was like it's funny because like I'm sure we'll all talk about like how hard the business stuff is, particularly journalists, but this was like, it sort of like fell into my lap and I was like, oh my God, this is easy. Why are people making such a big deal about it? It turns out that it's going forward, it's a little harder. But yeah, so that was good. And I'm just using it mostly to figure out, what works both from an audience perspective and from the marketer perspective. I mean, I did a lot of sort of the intersection of the business side and the editorial side at Digiday. So it's not like totally foreign, obviously, to me, but, I think it's good to experiment and to try new things. And I think while subscriptions are amazing, they're an amazing core of a business. I think too often, like there's this assumption that the way that independent newsletters in particular are going to be sustainable is through subscriptions. I think that often will be the case, but not always the case. I think you can look at Morning Brew. I mean, there's lots of great opportunities for different monetization vehicles, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's consulting, whether it's providing, different like content services, et cetera.
Yeah, and maybe I'll kick it to Aaron on that one, because Aaron, you've done a lot of different kinds of work, a lot of different kinds of projects. And, Brian, you wrote about this week in your newsletter about how, people think subscriptions are the thing, but then you're dealing with churn and you have all sorts of other issues. And Aaron, you found a way to kind of diversify, I think, right? Your revenue approach. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So like, this is a lot of me figuring it out as you go. So you're getting the fully transparent, like I'm still figuring it out. Fortunately, like my side projects are completely sustainable. Like if I technically do have a salary job right now at the moment, but if I were to walk away from that today, I could keep myself afloat. So we're just kind of seeing how long I can do that and figuring out things as we go there. But a lot of it comes through, like, I love this comment from David Grant that come in is like, build relationships, like quit thinking in this transactional way of thinking. I think we've gotten the bad habit of that. And like marketers and everybody's like, scratch my back. Like, I want to be featured, like be a human at the end of the day. Like we're all in this like world together. And a lot of it, like coming from my first job was in an ad agency doing like the design strategy side of everything. And when we looked at relationships, it was a lot of like, where does your brand values lie? Where can you collaborate versus like, tag and team up with other people? Where is a win-win situation and finding those win-wins? So thinking like, I don't have a paywall right now on my newsletter, but I do a lot of like branded content approaches or like help other brands identify new revenue streams. And one thing that's been really helpful in that, like I'm teaching a course with a couple other creators on the internet, and we've been super successful just by having fun and building together. So team up where you can.
That's great. That's a great tip. Yeah, we talk about armies of one, but it's really almost always a group of people, right, that you're gathering support from in one way or another. Like Brian, you mentioned the relationship you had with this marketer. In other cases, it's personal advisors or mentors. In other cases, it's partners who are doing design or selling with us or for us. Darian, do you want to jump in here? How are you thinking about this in terms of balancing different revenue streams or generating new kinds of revenue?
Yeah. So, number one, I really like the point in the distinguish that Brian made up just around. I think that sometimes because of the way that now we're talking about Substack or newsletters, and it's because it's becoming a thing to talk about. I like when there's more nuance to the conversation, because most people I would say are not, making a sustainable income off of their subscription. that's not the case for me. And so I still have a variety of revenue streams that I use to support myself. I still am writing for some media, for some publications. It depends on the rate. I mean, as I'm sure everybody on this call knows, stories can range anywhere from $300 to $500 to $1 a word to $2 a word, depending on what you write. And so thankfully I've gotten to the point where I'm writing ironically more for print, where they still have more money. And so, that actually has been really great. But, I've been, actually partnering and looking to partner with, more of either social platforms or other media organizations. I mean, even just speaking of Facebook and their journalism project, I have not specifically with that program, but I've worked with Instagram to host panels around journalism. And so that is a part of my revenue too. If there's a way that I could work with either a social platform as a journalist or, but as an independent journalist, you know, that is really more of the work I'm hoping to look into, and with other media platforms as well, or maybe with other newsletters. And I guess just to give a little story, and maybe this can help to push the conversation a little bit, but I would say I have a pretty small newsletter. I'm just about to hit 2,000 subscribers, but I think the good thing is that my open rate remains consistent and above average, right? So I know I have something, but it's really about growing it. But I also think something, and I'm going to find the link because I'm really just looking at my screenshot right now. I believe it's from Pew, but I wanted to bring up this stat because I've been thinking about it so much lately. It's about, kind of the statement is African Americans and Hispanics are less likely than white people to pay for news subscriptions. So what does that mean for somebody like me? Right. And so I've been thinking so much. And then also most of my paid subscribers are white. And so I've been thinking a lot about, you know, who am I putting up a paywall for if I'm speaking and I'm talking and I'm reporting a lot about Black people in this beauty industry where we overspend and we over-index. You know, who am I now? You know, if I'm giving specific content to people who subscribe, who are those people, and maybe who am I not, right? And so I'm thinking a lot about these questions when I'm figuring out my revenue stream and figuring out what my subscription model will actually look like. So yeah, just some things I think to get people thinking about just the different nuances of like who your audience is, but also who you and also like creating an eclectic, diverse audience, which is ultimately what I want.
Thanks, Darren. Yeah, I want to come back to that point about growing. You know, 2,000 is a great mark to hit. Congrats on that. And the open rate, as you point out, is a huge thing, right? If people are actually opening it, it shows you've got some loyalty and people actually care about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sherry, how are you thinking about this? You've been really candid about your numbers on Patreon in the past and sort of how that grew. And since that post, which went so viral, I know you've grown dramatically. And if you don't mind sharing, it may sound like boasting to you, but I think people would be really, really appreciative of hearing how you've grown. If you don't mind sharing some specifics, that would be really great.
For sure, not at all. Yeah, I just quickly wrote in the chat in response to Anita that I just passed the year 2 mark, so definitely like a year 2 version of that post is due, but I can definitely share some early stats. So I guess so for context, for people who saw like the link to like my initial LinkedIn post, so that was a year ago. At that time, I think I had a couple hundred paying subscribers, like between 200, 300 paying subscribers. I was making like around $3,500 to $4,000 a month, which was, I think for like living in New York, specifically in Brooklyn where I'm based, it was like not nearly enough to make a sustainable living. So I was still balancing that with freelance writing gigs, but still like growing out the membership. Now I'm in a very different position where I'm spending the majority of my time building out Water Music, so building out my own newsletter, and then still taking on freelance writing gigs, but as like a minority complement income-wise to the majority of the income that I'm making from newsletters. So now I have a little over 1,400 paying subscribers, and the price range. So I also should have mentioned earlier, I run my membership on Patreon, which allows you to set multiple different price tiers for membership. So people are paying anywhere from $3 a month to $70 a month if it's like a group subscription, but the average is around like $7, $10 a month. So that comes out to around like $12,000 to $13,000 in monthly revenue. And then also another big difference from last year is that definitely not all of that money is going to me. I spend up to 50% of that revenue paying guest writers. I work with a network of like outside freelance writers now. So definitely building like a proper media company in that sense. And also, paying for admin and business expenses for things like MailChimp for email lists, et cetera. So so that's kind of the like higher level summary of how much money I'm making. I think one distinction that I think I discussed briefly in that initial LinkedIn post, but is important to think about in terms of like the kind of value you're delivering. It's also something that's come up a lot in a lot of like media conversations, I think, is the difference between subscriptions and membership. So I definitely see what I'm building as a membership and not just a subscription. People do like see it as a subscription model because it's billed in the same way. In your bank account, you're getting billed a flat fee every month or every year, depending on your plan. But a membership I see as like much more community driven, where getting value from other, not just from the brand or from the publication, the articles I'm publishing, but also from other readers and other paying members. I think that's a core part of the value that people get from Water and Music. So like from the very base tier of $3 a month, you get access to a private Discord server. And I guess my target audience is niche of like people working in the music industry. But within that, I also am aiming for as diverse of a range of people as I can. So there are like emerging artists releasing their first album, to people working within major labels, to people in the live business, and just encouraging this cross-pollination that doesn't always happen in the industry in terms of exchanging thoughts more openly. So just thought I would mention that as, because it's not just like publishing articles, publishing content and hoping people come. It's like really building like inter-reader interaction into the experience as well.
Thanks, Sherry. That's really appreciated candor, and it's also kudos to you. Congratulations on building that. Year two, I mean, you're on a rocket ship. Like, that is so fast to have accomplished that. It takes, and I want to make sure we're clear to people that, that is pretty unusual. Like most people, it takes at least a couple of years to solidify their growth, and you've done that really remarkably quickly. So kudos to you on that, and also kudos to you on being open about it. A lot of people are shy about sharing for various reasons that are reasonable, but it's really helpful when people do, because it gives us something we can aspire to and something we can work toward and learn from. So thank you for doing that, and to all of you who are sharing openly today. There are a few things that came up in those comments. One is, and people are asking a few different questions. One from Brian just asked about, it's difficult to run things on your own. How do you go about hiring and paying for services? Sherry, maybe you can continue on that point. You mentioned you use this outside network of freelancers. Maybe you could just run down a few of the top things that you rely on other people to help you with, whether it's accounting or whether it's hiring freelancers, and maybe others can chime in. Who do you go to for help, and how do you find those people?
Sure. Yeah. So my team, quote unquote, is like super lean right now. So I don't have anyone working like full time as a Water Music staff member. It's still just me technically. I like fully own the company, but I definitely, there's someone outside who's working on building a separate website for Water Music now. Someone else definitely for like accounting and especially for tax purposes with tax season coming up shortly. And then I'm definitely also thinking about like hiring like issues in real time. I think I've, for instance, I like haven't spent a dime on paid marketing yet. And I'm like trying to ask myself, is that something I should invest in, or should I like continue growing organically? For now, all like the people who I've like paid to, I guess, help grow Water and Music, the product itself, have all that is focused just on the content. So like hiring outside writers, because I do think even though I have grown a lot in the last year, I think I'm still in a stage where the articles and the content is the business model. Like there's no distinction. Like if I publish consistently really good articles, really in-depth articles, then I think that will drive growth, especially for the kind of audience and the topics that I'm writing about. So in terms of hiring, I'm just prioritizing and definitely investing the most in just outside writers to help increase the publishing cadence.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Others, Darian, you want to chime in on this one as well, and anyone else?
Yeah, so this is I think one of the things I'll say I do miss about working on staff or in a newsroom is that collaboration or having an editor, especially when you're a writer. I think it's so crucial. And it really makes your work better. I think your work shines where even if for your newsletter, you are able to just get some support on it where you can. And so I have done more of like paid services with photographers or maybe other people in the realm of, okay, I want to commission photos for somebody who I would like to cover. For things around like copy or grammar, I admittingly will ask my mom. And so before I publish my newsletter, I'll send her in a Google Doc. Now she knows how to use Google Docs.
What are her rates? Is she like full or is she?
I don't know. I can ask her. I was
gonna say, I want some help too now.
Yeah, I can ask her what her rate is. I will get back to everybody. So I do that, and then honestly, if I have a subject or something written, I have found that my friends who are writers or are editors, I really lean on my community, honestly, because I'm kind of at that phase. But that's kind of how I start to think about it, and something that I have even done, and just to give people an example of like how I think if you're not at a stage where you are feeling like you can't pay people their rate, but you're really aiming to do that, as we all should. I've done things with photographers who, even if I couldn't pay them their full rate, I would pay for their expenses. So, paying for their film, paying for, anything that really they used to help and to contribute to the project, reimbursing them for if they needed to take an Uber or something like that. So I really try to do things in that way. So maybe if that's helpful to anybody, but yeah, I would say that's really how I'm pulling in help. My mom, I pay people absolutely whenever I'm able to, and whenever I can, and then really leaning on my community and my writers community.
Great.
Yeah.
Erin?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to quickly chime in on something both Sherry and Darian said, and it's I see it coming through the comments. There's I think as much as we get subscription and membership confused, we get audience and community confused, which is one of my Twitter I'll die on that hill things. Because it's and it's the importance of actually building relationships, and not just with your members, but building relationships with the people that you work with, and making sure that the people who read your content or listen to your podcast or whatever else you're creating can connect with one another. So I ran a comedy podcast with my friends. It was small a year ago, but we even created a small group. It was about life's biggest letdowns. It was the sham. So it was all about weird letdowns in your day-to-day life. So we just created a group of people to voice us concerns of what are you mad about today? And we just ask people. And it was this really fun, engaging community. And it was the great, could deliver content ideas, and it delivered so much more than just one way of doing it. And I think it's really, really important to drive that in. It's don't think about your audience, think about your community members, and don't even just think about what you're doing to them, but what are they actually getting out of being in that community with one another? Because for me, it's helped me a ton with even my own, my design was done by a friend of mine, and it was super helpful. And we were able to tag team it together, which was a fun experience.
I want to throw a quick poll out to the group, and then Brian, I'll let you jump in. I'm curious if people here, are you running your own projects? Those who are here in the audience, are you already running your own thing? Could be a newsletter, an independent venture of some other sort, or do you plan to start one in the future? Or maybe it's not for you either now or in the future. So just give people a chance to weigh in on that. And then Brian, you could chime in on that. And then we're heading toward a couple other new topics, one of which is about the tech stack. We've heard a couple of terms thrown around here, Patreon and Substack. For example, MailChimp was mentioned as well. Just curious if you'd say about, what you chose and why, very briefly, and then we'll talk about growth. So, we've heard a couple of numbers here, 12K a month. Sherry mentioned, Darian mentioned hitting 2,000. How are you all building your community and engaging with people who are already reading, and then bringing in new people? So we'll go to those topics next. So it looks like about half the people here who are answered here, at least, are planning to start something. And almost a third are already running something. So that's pretty exciting. Not too many people are just saying no on this. So I think we've got a lot of entrepreneurial-minded people here today, which I guess isn't surprising given our topic. I'll give people a little bit more time. Some people are still figuring out the run the world thing here. And if you are running something and you want to mention in the comment your own project, now's your chance. Feel free to chime in. Spread the word about whatever cool work you're doing, your newsletter link, your Patreon, whatever you want to share, your YouTube channel. Other people might be interested in checking that out. So feel free to share that in the chat if you want to. Okay, let me close this up. Or actually, Brian, you can maybe stay on this one while people are finishing their responses.
Yeah, I would love just to continue on the audience first community, because Aaron, sure. if next time you're in some Twitter fight about this, just tag me. I'll come in and start throwing haymakers, because I think it's a great point, and a lot of people use membership when it's really subscriptions, and they use community when it's really audience. And I think, an important thing to think about, a lot of people talk about owning the audience, and that's just ridiculous, and it's cliche and really bad. The test to me, if you have like a community, and I think it's really powerful, particularly for niche areas, is can you put yourself at the center of a group of like-minded people who want to interact with each other? Like, I think a lot of times you can be sort of egotistical and it just being about you and stuff like this, what the audience wants from you and stuff. But it gets really powerful when you have, you draw people in and are able to allow them to connect with each other. Right. And that's when you're creating value that's far in excess to a subscription, which is really access to content. That to me is the test of membership is, are you providing more than just access to content? And the test for community is, are you focused on a group and enabling them to connect with each other? So that's another point.
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. Are you providing just content? Is content the main thing, or is content plus relationship or plus other activities or connecting with one another? That's
every area is different. I know, like Darian, with your we found with beauty, the desire for connectivity was extreme among, at least on the business side. We didn't really do the consumer side, but I'm sure there was so much in that. But you move over to the media, particularly on the advertising side, agencies, their business models are based on acting like they're the smartest people and know everything about everything, and they can't ask questions. So that makes for I did a lot of awkward town halls. So that was different but people were willing to pay for access to content and intelligence that would help them make more money, basically. But every single area has different dynamics.
If I could add one thing too, is this conversation is just making me also think about, even for my own newsletter, of I'm talking about how I'm struggling around what to do with this word subscription. And again, maybe the answer is and I think this is also about how are you using the tools that you have? How are you using the platforms, even in ways where it's not intended to, right? It's maybe my subscription needs to feel more actually like a membership versus a subscription of only a specific kind of people are getting that content, So I guess I just want to show how my brain is thinking too, as I'm listening to everybody talk.
So people I know always wonder about the tools. I don't think the tools are the primary thing. I think you can run a good venture on probably a lot of different platforms. The content and the relationships are most important. But people are always wondering about that, and it is tricky to figure it out from the outside, and there seem like there are a lot of choices and there's a lot of confusion. Substack is super simple, which is why a lot of people jump to it. But I know there's some other options, and Sherry, I know you've looked at a lot of these. Do any of you want to just very quickly, briefly, a lesson learned, a platform that's worked, that hasn't worked, a reason you chose one or another platform? Maybe we can just go around the horn, kind of lightning style. I don't know, Brian, do you want to share how you ended up with Substack, and then maybe Sherry?
It was easiest. I was sort of leaving Digiday and then hadn't thought about what was next, so I just registered it.
Okay.
Substack. I mean, I think with my big sort of takeaway from 10 years to Digit, because the product group was under me, was there's so many more tools now than there were like 10 years ago, and prices have come down. They're way more accessible. You just think about virtual events and stuff like this. This is my first time using Run the World, but I'm sure a lot of us have used like 10 of these at this point. There's just so many. I don't even remember there being any like 5 years ago. So that's a good thing. And sorting through them, though, of course, is a pain in the ass. But I think, Substack is like just the easiest. But ultimately, if you're going to build it as like an independent business, Substack is simply not, in my view, like they're not moving fast enough with providing some very basic tools for audience growth, simply advertising. I mean, I think the advertising sort of right now, more people are making more money. This is my guess. I have no data. People are making more money off advertising on Substack than they are on subscriptions outside of the top tier. So if you take off the top tier everyone talks about, there's more of an opportunity to me in advertising. I see so many people run advertising on there, and you just like hack it together. I understand their like stance, but anyway, I think ultimately most people will, if they're going to make this their own real business, need to move off to an independent platform that they truly own. And there's a lot of options now, whether it's Pico or Ghost, with piecing it together yourselves. But of course, it's a pain in the ass too.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. A shout out to Dan Oshinsky of Inbox Collective, who also advocates for kind of having ownership of your kind of email service provider, delivery management process, all that kind of stuff. Dan teaches in our program. That's been some guidance from him. I do want to mention just briefly, since it just happened yesterday, I think Substack just expanded their metrics and analytics, right? Which makes it a little bit easier to break down who's reading you and how many times they've opened different things, and sort of segment your readership and communicate with that different segments. So hopefully, and they did just recently also add some design options, and so hopefully they're kind of expanding the services they provide to independents. Sherry, maybe you can share your tech stack, how you ended up with Patreon. Some people have had questions about Patreon in terms of getting locked in with your data. Can you talk a little?
I guess just a platform for me to aggregate my freelance articles for people who are interested in following my work. So it's a very like personal outlet. And I ran that on Review, which Twitter just recently acquired, which is a whole other like interesting trend in of itself. But so I used that. I decided to move to, so then from there, I decided to move to MailChimp, which is definitely on the more expensive side, but I think just had much better analytics, or the kinds of analytics that I was looking for. Of course, yeah, as you mentioned, Jeremy, like there are other companies like Substack who may be catching up, but for now, I think MailChimp offers the best options analytics-wise. And then I chose Patreon at the time over Substack, and Review even had like a paid membership option, paid subscription option. But I decided to go with Patreon because one, I definitely cared about like price flexibility, or allowing people to pay, support however much they could, anywhere from like $3 to $70 to, support Water Music, especially initially as it was growing. So, and Patreon is one of the few platforms out there that allows for that in a kind of self-serve way, in a way that doesn't feel like clunky, or that you have to like know a lot of like coding, HTML, etc. So there was that. And then Patreon also has a lot of great integrations with other community platforms where, so I think their target audience is actually quote unquote creators more than writers, but like platforms where creators are already active. So like Patreon is a pretty good Discord integration, for example. So Discord is actually my main community hub for my readers. I host regular like industry facing hangouts there exclusively for members, and Discord has like really smooth, like quick, like live audio chat options. And so you can have, synchronous live Clubhouse style like, audio chat and text chat kind of organized by topic in the same place. And Discord, that as a platform, they've evolved in an interesting way because they like started as a gaming platform, but now, a lot of outside communities are trying to take advantage of a similar structure. So I found that to be super effective. Integrates kind of automatically with Patreon, so it's quite easy to manage. And then they also have a WordPress integration, which I'm using to build this separate website currently. Probably. So this hasn't been like a hindrance to the like growth of Water Music or like my business, but I am definitely aware that, unlike Substack or Ghost or a lot of other like popular self-publishing platforms, Patreon ultimately owns the payment relationship. So like you don't integrate your own Stripe, account information in a way that allows you to, port your audience more easily to another platform in the case you want to switch. So this like kind of multi-platform tech stack works for me for now, but definitely aware of that. I think as the business continues to grow, I would probably have to move to a different platform just because you'd want to own that information or like more direct access to that information. But for now, I think just like the ease of integration is why I decided to go with Patreon specifically.
So we're getting into the last bit of time we have here. I could listen to all of you for all day, and I'm sure many people here would really enjoy more insight from you, so they can follow you online after this. But I did want to give Aaron a chance to jump in on this one, because Aaron, I'm super fan of you and your use of Notion and how you kind of like have this incredible design sensibility with that as a different kind of a platform for your own use. But I also want to give you each a chance to just say anything that you want to say by way of concluding. And also I want to give the audience, the folks here, our community, a chance to chime in with questions that we haven't gotten to. So feel free, if you're listening to this or watching this, type any questions you want them to address, and you all can see those as they come in as well. But so, Aaron first, and then kind of any other thoughts that somebody wants to tie up that you haven't had a chance to share.
Chronic new tool trier, so like I can't resist and probably have way too many beta apps on my phone, and like I'm in an entire Slack community of beta app testers. It's a problem.
Oh, yeah.
But like
I want in on
like,
that.
I'll send you an invite, but I'm just like sitting here like I'm in absolutely everything, and honestly I'm a throw everything at the wall kind of person and see what sticks. So I wish that I had a really better logic way of doing it. I do have a core like small group of friends on a Discord chat where we share like all of us are kind of building similar things, and we share hot takes on like, Clubhouse has been a very popular conversation there recently. And like, I'm also like, I'm really a fan of like this app, like Space app, which is like a Clubhouse competitor kind of, so to speak, but it's smaller groups. And I've been actually doing small co-working sessions on it. So we're all like, this is what we're working on for this hour. Like, then we're going to dip out. Huge Notion fan. That's where I keep my life and organized. Wrote an entire master's thesis in Notion, which is probably a little bit wild, and I can drop the link below. But I think like, again, find what works for you. There's no one right way of doing it. And if you build your community in a way that's like an actual community versus a transactional relationship, the platform does not matter. Like, I don't care if you're using Clubhouse or a podcast or a newsletter or whatever else, like your platform at the end of the day doesn't matter if you're creating good content in a way that does.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So feel free to jump in here. Something we haven't touched upon, something you want to add, something that you're working on next or you have coming up in the upcoming months that you want to share about, and or anything else that you see in the chat. And I'll try to pick out a question or two if we haven't addressed those.
One thing I was going to say around growth is that I have found that with my newsletter, in terms of growth with subscribers of all kinds, whether they're just free signups or they pay, just as in, I would say, as being in a newsroom or a news organization, you want to be on top of scoops. You want to break news. You want to be on top of a story. Anytime that you can, I think, depending on what you do, anytime where you can also do that and provide something that you feel like people need, again, you're showing that you're providing a service, something that's not really out there. I have found a lot of growth that in that way. I within my Substack, I created a live updates version or style post of the Gorilla Glue story. And, I created it because people were literally asking for updates, like just out they weren't tagging anybody. People were just deeply concerned about this woman who had put, Gorilla Glue in her hair, and it became literally this whole storyline. And so I was like, technically Substack isn't for this, but I'm going to do it because, and I want to give this also the same seriousness that maybe, a breaking, any other sort of breaking news story. And I found that people appreciated that touch to it, that felt more like, this is this crazy viral story. It's like, well, no, why are people so invested in that? And let's give it a little bit of seriousness. And so anytime you can hop on moments like that, and you can create something that people need, you're going to see growth that way. And I also think it's a testament to what you're doing too. You want things that feel on time. You want to provide things as a journalist that people are alluding to that they need, or information that they're alluding to that they want. And so I think of it that way too. And then I was going to say, I really echo the points around find the platforms that you are most comfortable with and that you think serve your purposes. I think we are in such a space right now where there are so many platforms. You don't know how things are going to shake out. You don't know who's going to end up on top or whatever it may be. But I try to remind myself, like, hey, I'm a creative, smart person, and like these platforms need me too. It's not, I don't like feeling beholden to them all of the time. And I think that whenever we can put our own genius, our own smarts onto it, that's really when the platforms shine.
So I want to give you each a chance to do a quick lightning round of final thoughts. And I do want to mention, we have a couple other sessions coming up. Hopefully everyone will join us for those. Leading as a Journalism Entrepreneur of Color coming up with Juleka and Aaron in a few minutes. Then podcast Entrepreneurship with Martina Castro, who's awesome, and Constanza Gallardo, who's an alum of our school, who's also awesome. I listened to both of their podcasts, which are incredible, the Adam Grant one and the Duolingo one, if no one's ever heard that one. And then there's another panel about venture capital and philanthropy. David Grant and Anita will be there, others. It's a great topic. And then we'll have a little cocktail party. If you haven't done the cocktail party on Run the World, it's fun. It's basically one-on-one speed chats, just quick conversations. You get to meet a few people. So stick around for that or come back for that. Final kind of comments, quick things you want to add, something you didn't mention. Brian, I miss your voice, by the way, on the Digiday podcast. I loved that. You had some really good interviews. If anyone hasn't heard those, go back.
Topic.
I wonder if you're planning to integrate that in what you're doing now.
I keep going back and forth with the podcast because I was like, I'm not sure whether the world needs another podcast. And then,
with you, I think
Clubhouse and Darian, you and I, that was my first Clubhouse. I was on one with Darian a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, maybe I'll just do it here and stuff. Like, I think kind of going back to what you were saying, Darian, is like, you just got to try stuff for growth and things. Because to me, the growth is actually the hardest part, I think, of all of this. Like, the monetization will come if you're creating value for a specific community, and whether it's B2B or B2C. It's not easy, it's hard. But the growth aspect, because I think a lot of people, you hear the stories about the head of the tail. You hear the stories about Morning Brew to the moon. You hear the stories about Heather Cox Richardson or Ben Thompson and stuff like this. These are the exceptions to the norm. In my personal experience with Digiday and stuff, all growth is incremental, and you'll get I'm sure all of you have had you have your first thing and you're like, oh my God, this thing is going to be you start going into some of the compound growth calculator and you're like, this is going to be massive. And then you hit a wall. And everyone's wall is different. You can, it just depends on the person. I mean, just starting from scratch, if you're early in your career, your wall is you're going to hit your wall a lot quicker if you've got a bigger, et cetera. But I think the important thing is that just recognize that all of I don't know if this is FOMO, but don't think that most people see this meteoric growth. If you're not seeing meteoric growth and it's incremental, that's normal. It's kind of getting your arm hurting after the vaccine. That means it's good. That means you got a vaccine. I don't know if that even works, but
I think that's great. Yeah, that's great advice. I was listening to a podcast yesterday. The person was saying, people overestimate what they can do in the short run, and they underestimate what they can do with small effort in a small consistent effort in the long run. And I think that absolutely applies in the case of building a community around what you're doing. Okay, we're last couple minutes. Last final words. Anyone who wants to? Aaron, you want to, or Sherry, you want to offer final thoughts?
Yeah, so one, I totally agree with what Brian just said. Like, incremental growth is good, and especially like earlier on in like the first month of growing my Patreon page, I had like maybe like 50 like paying subscribers, 5,200. It wasn't too many, and you have to like rewire your thinking of success, because you can like, you know, spend hours and hours writing an article, and then it'll only reach 50 people, which isn't like inherently bad. You know, you're reaching people who are, you know, shelling money out of their wallet to support you directly, and they want to fund your work, which is amazing. But you just have to like get out of this mindset necessarily of thinking about scale, or just about delivering value directly to you know, your paying readers. And that's related to like a point I want to make. I've noticed there's a really important difference. They're not mutually exclusive, but there's a really important difference, I think, between like creator-centric and reader-centric value. So I think what I mean by that is, I think a lot of the like top publications that are growing on Substack, especially in the more political sphere, are very like writer or creator centric. So like people are subscribing because they just want to hear the thoughts of this one writer who's like, you know, doing like a thought dump every day or like a couple of times a week on like the latest news or trends. Whereas I really do think for like sustainable growth, you really have to think with a service mindset. I think that's like the best, like the blessing. And actually, no, I don't think it's a curse. I think it's like a great thing about the newsletter format, is that you really do have to be beholden to your readers, and like they are like your first and most important customers, and you really have to provide a service to them. It's not, and this is like, I think Ben Thompson actually does a good job of balancing, you know, his own brand as like a kind of talking head in tech, but also definitely providing a service. So that's just, I think, an important like difference in terms of the source of value to keep in mind, especially with these more niche, you know, one person media companies that are coming up.
Thank you. Yeah. Any last? I think we're about at our time. I'll let people find you on your various platforms. Thanks to all of you for being here, for sharing so many good insights and thoughts. I've jotted down as many as I could quickly, and I'm sure others have as well. And I'm looking forward to following each of you, and hopefully we'll have a chance to chat again. And maybe we'll invite you back to share again with our creators, because everyone can learn from the work you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks everyone for
thank you as well.
And thanks everyone for participating. And we'll meet you over in the next session. If you close out of here, you should get a chance to see the next session listed here, and you can click that link Luciana just posted here in the chat. So you can click over there and head over to the next session if you'd like. See you there. And thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.